Microsoft Excel, the Swiss Army knife of finance and business. It's ubiquitous enough that it's become its own esport, and its extensibility is so powerful that most IT administrators consider it a security threat. And there are plenty of system administrators out there that will warn you that Excel is not a database, but history has shown us that where there's a will, there's a way. In this video, I'm going to be exploring some alternative spreadsheet applications that can run natively on Linux, because I would like to run Linux, but avoid spinning up a virtual machine just to run Windows, just so I can have Microsoft Office. And I do like native applications because while cloud-based software like Microsoft 365 and Google Workspace have a lot of useful features and advantages, they're not really full replacements for a desktop application like Excel, especially when it comes to stuff like multitasking. Further, cloud-based solutions have a whole list of downsides that I'm not going to get into here. Anyway, the 5 alternative applications that I'm going to be looking at today are LIbreOffice Calc, ONLYOFFICE Spreadsheet, Calligra Sheets, SoftMaker PlanMaker, and WPS Spreadsheets. GNOME also has a spreadsheet application out there called Numeric, but I took one glance at that thing and just noped right out. Now, I evaluated these applications by exploring how fully they replicate the suite of functions that Excel offers. Do they have like advanced statistical capabilities? Do they have solver? How are their charting tools? Do they offer pivot tables? Do they offer data manipulation like filters and sorts and text columns in case you're bringing in outside data? Are they extensible? Do they have plugins or add-ins? Do they have the ability to track changes and leave comments on edits in a document? Do they have any issues with compatibility with Excel? Because if you're going to be really replacing Excel, you have to understand that other people aren't, and so your files need to be fully usable by someone else using Excel, and the files they send you need to be fully usable on your end. I also consider subjective things like how similar the UI is to Excel, because I consider that a positive because, look, I'm used to Excel and so is everybody else. So I want something that is easy to just use, something that is intuitive, something that I don't have to work hard to relearn. I also considered whether or not the software was proprietary, because that could be a problem for some people, and whether or not some of the applications are pushing more into like cloud-based solutions, because you don't want to get locked into some system that moves to cloud and leaves you behind. All that said, let's get going. Here are my thoughts. I'm going to start off with the one application out of all of these that I thought was just a total dud: Calligra. Calligra can be installed pretty easily on Fedora, as it's included in Fedora's repos. My notes, whenever I got finished with this thing, actually read, "Using this program is torture. The UI is awful. It's not very customizable. I mean, look, whenever I click into a cell, you can barely even see what's selected. And the customization just seems to be pretty non-existent. It did have most of Excel's functions, but it doesn't have any of the advanced statistical packages. Its solver optimizer was pretty basic. Pivot tables and data manipulation were all very basic. I couldn't find any way to make charts, and I mean, it just breaks charts whenever they're imported. I also didn't see anything in the way of extensibility or any way to track any changes to a document. It is open source, but I didn't even test it for compatibility with Excel because I just couldn't wait to stop using this program. It's definitely just not an Excel substitute. Next up, let's look at ONLYOFFICE, which is available as a Flatpak. It seems to have about 80% of Excel's built-in functions, with all of the basics covered. It doesn't have any advanced statistics, nor does it have solver available for optimization problems, and the charts are also pretty basic. And it does have pivot tables also, but they are a little weird to work with. The data manipulation tools are there. It's got filters and sorts and stuff, but I did find that the copy-paste seemed to be kind of laggy and slow. And as I used it, that was just kind of one of the issues I kept coming across, were that things just sometimes were a little laggy. It does have plugins, but whenever I searched through here, I didn't really find anything very useful, but Technically, it is extensible. The UI is pretty decent, very similar to Excel. It's got ribbon menus, which I like. I apologize that everything is very small. I'm not sure about the scaling. Since this is a flat pack, I might have to mess with something if I wanted to increase the UI scaling, but this is just what it defaulted to. The right-click menus are pretty good. It's got icons in here. It doesn't have the quick format section like Excel has, but overall I would consider this pretty good. But the biggest downside that I came across was, again, the UI and using this software just didn't feel very responsive. Compatibility back and forth to Excel seemed just fine. ONLYOFFICE is also open source, although it does seem like they're trying to push in a little bit to the enterprise cloud-based software system, so I'm assuming that it's going to continue to be available as a standalone app suite, but it's just something to be aware of that they also do offer a lot of cloud-based tools. Overall, I would consider ONLYOFFICE to be pretty basic. It does have a pretty decent UI, but it's not really an Excel replacement if you're a serious user. Now on to SoftMaker PlanMaker, and as you can see, I am using a trial version because SoftMaker is proprietary software. It costs about $130 for their desktop Office suite. They also do have a free version called FreeOffice, which is free, but it does lack some features like charts and spell check and customizing the menus. SoftMaker is headquartered in Germany, and they claim to be GDPR compliant. Their website seems to mostly be pushing their NX version of their software, which I think is either cloud-based or always online connected, and it's got ChatGPT built in. It's definitely a subscription service, but if you look closely, you can see more purchase options down at the bottom, and that's how you can get their regular desktop apps. So here you can see the professional edition for $130, or you can get the standard version for about $100. The real big difference seems to be things like what type of files are supported and whether or not you can use group policies, as well as some German language tools, which may or may not be useful to you. I don't really like that they're hiding the option to purchase the desktop apps, so it kind of immediately makes me less of a fan of this company right off the bat. So in order to install SoftMaker, I followed their instructions on their website, and for Fedora, you just add their repo and then use a basic sudo dnf install, and everything worked fine. So PlanMaker itself is kind of hit and miss. It did seem to replicate almost all of Excel's functionality. As a matter of fact, as far as the built-in functions, it replicated the most compared to Excel of any of the pieces of software that I demoed. And the only ones that I really found that were missing were fairly esoteric and not really what I would say are really necessary functions for most people. That said, it doesn't have any sort of advanced data analytics, nor does it have a solver add-in. The charts were a little weird to use, and it doesn't seem to have any extensibility or any ability to track changes on a worksheet. The pivot tables work pretty similarly to Microsoft Excel. The UI in general was also very similar to Excel. It's got a pretty decent right-click menu with good icons on everything. Again, it does miss out on some of the quick formatting, but it has a little bit more than most of the others. It's got a pretty good little ribbon menu layout. That's good for maximizing viewable space on your spreadsheets. The biggest downside I really found is function suggestions. Usually when you start typing in a function, you get a suggestion from the software. But in PlanMaker, it's very, very slow to do that. You basically have to type out the full command before it really pops up any suggestions. Overall, I concluded that PlanMaker wasn't terrible. It's got a pretty good UI, and it does have a lot of good functions built in, but it doesn't have the upper end stuff. It doesn't have solver. It doesn't have the advanced stats. You can see here the chart that I made looks a little weird. It does have good compatibility back and forth with Excel files, but it just didn't meet my requirements, so I can't consider it a full replacement. Next, I tried WPS Office made by Kingsoft. And every time I open it up, it would give me this little error message about missing fonts. I guess I should probably say don't report that anymore. And just close. WPS is proprietary software. It was originally designed for the Chinese market, and it is available as a flat pack. Of all of the spreadsheet editors I tried, it is the most direct copy, I would say, of the Microsoft Excel UI. The icons are all almost just direct ripoffs of the Microsoft Excel icons. Most of the tools look and work exactly like they do in Excel. So if you go to, say, insert a chart, everything is going to look very similar to Excel. You can even see the default color schemes, icons, fonts, everything pretty much identical to the Microsoft Excel defaults. That said, it also misses a lot of the higher end features that I'm looking for. There are no add-ins, there are no plugins. It doesn't have any of the advanced statistical analysis like regressions or anything built in. It does have Solver, and their Solver looks very similar to the Microsoft Excel Solver, so I like the UI, but it only has linear optimization. So you can't do any sort of nonlinear optimization with their Solver tool, and that makes it useless for a large number of problems. Now that said, because the UI is so similar to Microsoft Excel, the use of things like pivot tables, charts, filters, formatting, data manipulation, all was very comfortable because it all looks and acts almost exactly like Excel. The UI is pretty good. It's got a ribbon menu system, although I'm not sure if the ribbon can be hidden, so it does take up a little space at the top of the screen. The right-click menus, very good, almost identical to Excel, again missing some of the quick formatting stuff. And I would say overall, WPS would be a fairly suitable replacement for Excel for a basic user who doesn't need any extensibility or advanced functionality, because you are giving up the really powerful stuff that Excel can do. Now, WPS claims to be used by 200 million people, and again, it is targeted at the Chinese market, and it is developed in China, and it is proprietary software. So that is something that you probably want to keep in mind. And I know a lot of people might be a little upset that I mentioned something like that, but it's a consideration that many people care about. I would also say, before you get too upset, let's all acknowledge that if I had just said, hey, Microsoft spies on people, probably nobody would bat an eye. Without getting bogged down in that, let's just move along and get to our final contender, LibreOffice, which is a completely open source piece of software. LibreOffice was very easy to install because it's the default on Fedora, and so it's available from FlatHub or via Fedora Flatpaks. LibreOffice Calc is the program that I spent the most time with because it's the closest, I would say, to being a full Excel replacement. When it comes to functions, I was able to get lists of all of the functions across a few different pieces of software that I compared, and I've got all the functions that Excel has. And out of all of them, Calc replicated the second most, and it's not missing much compared to Microsoft Excel. The only piece of software that had more of Excel's functions was PlanMaker, but that was a very, very narrow gap. So Calc replicates something like 90% of the functions that are available in Excel, and again, the ones it's missing are ones that really aren't that important. They're either very new or very esoteric functions. It also comes with advanced statistics. So if you go into data and statistics, you'll see it's got regressions, ANOVA, correlation, F-test, Z-test, chi-square, Fourier analysis. And these are very good tools. It's got log regression, power regression, you can look at residuals, you can change intercept, you can do all kinds of things just like you can in Excel. It also has Solver. So here's their Solver. It's somewhat similar to the Microsoft Excel version, and under options, you can pick linear or nonlinear optimization. That said, the nonlinear optimization for me didn't work out extremely well. So here I've got a little portfolio optimization problem that I set up, and this is something that in finance we do from time to time, and it does require some nonlinear optimization. So if I go into Tools, Solver, it's already set up here. So if I go into Options and I change this to be one of these evolutionary algos, and let's hit OK, solve, it runs a bunch of iterations, but it didn't really come up with a good solution. So if I hit OK, say keep result, it didn't really do anything. It didn't change the weights, and I found that it just wasn't really able to complete this problem. So they need better nonlinear optimization algorithms. That's all I can conclude. I tried a few of the ones that they have, and none of them worked consistently very well. So big kudos to having a solver. Downside is their solver doesn't work as well as Excel's works. Beyond that, it does have the usual stuff like charts and pivot tables. The data manipulation was pretty good. It's got filters. And the filters are pretty robust because you can filter by all kinds of things and you can do searching in there. The compatibility with Excel was all pretty good, and it also does have the ability to track changes, compare documents, merge documents. Their website says that it is built to allow for document sharing. I haven't tried any of that, but it looks like that stuff is in here. It does have extensions, although once again, whenever I actually looked at the extensions that were available, I didn't find anything that I found extremely useful. The biggest disappointment that I have with Calc is the UI. For example, if I copy and then start to paste something, there are no icons in the right-click menu, so it's not that the functionality is not there, but it is good usually to have some visual indicators of whatever it is you're about to do. And that's just missing. There's also no quick formatting in here, so I find that lacking. Up the top, the menus, you can set up ribbon menus. Under user interface, you can see you can go to a tabbed menu system. But the problem that I have with their tabbed interface is, well, right there, it crashes. And I have had some stability issues with Calc. It's crashed multiple times in there. Change the setting and it crashes. Let's get that back open. And now at least we do have the ribbon menu. So I don't know, whenever you change the menus, maybe it closes whatever, but it didn't give me any notification. It just shut down. Anyway, so here's the ribbon system and it works okay, but the problem is you can't hide these. And so it does just kind of waste a lot of space on the screen. And I don't like that. I wish these could be minimized. That's not too bad, and you are able to reconfigure things quite a bit, so you can change your menus around to be more to your liking. The default icons I found were not very good, but I was able to find some icon packs that are more similar to Excel, so that's helped quite a bit. So you can drag menus around, you can stack stuff, you can move it side by side. You can change your UI quite a bit, so it's a bit of a nitpick, but it is something I would like to see be different. And that's kind of my general impression, is everything's kind of here as far as functionality, but it's just like with this solver, it just doesn't look quite the same as Excel, and it feels like they're just trying to do their own thing a little bit, which to me is not the best. And using a lot of the tools, again, the functionality's there, but it's not intuitive. Coming from Excel and using their tools, like the paste special here, right? It's just not as intuitive. It doesn't give you any previews. You got to go through a couple of levels of menus to get here, and it's got a lot of options, right? It's not that it lacks functionality. It's just it's not clear all the time what's going to happen. The icons aren't quite what I'm used to, and it takes a bit of learning. One of the other problems I've had is like with auto-sizing rows and columns, it seems like the selection, the grab handles aren't calibrated really well, so you got to be very, very precise. And whenever you do auto-sizing, it doesn't always respond like I expect. And overall, my conclusion with Calc is it's pretty decent. I wish they'd just rip off Excel's UI like WPS and SoftMaker have. I mean, again, Excel is such a dominant piece of software that I don't see the usefulness in trying to reinvent a UI like it seems they do. And this is a trap that a lot of open source software, to me, falls into. I think they should just rip off Photoshop. They should just totally rip the thing off, make the icons the same, make the tools work the same, the menus should look the same, and if you want to add stuff, but have the basic layout and everything just look exactly like that. With Excel, I wish they do the same thing. The default icons, color schemes, the way the tools work, I wish it just looked like Excel. I get why other people might disagree, that's just my opinion. But I think I can live with this because the UI is customizable enough, and I think that the functionality is kind of at a level where, for the most part, I can probably get by using Calc. So I would say this is the only piece of software that I tried that I could say, I could see this replacing Excel for almost all use cases. The only thing kind of left on the table that I was really missing functionality-wise was better non-linear optimization, so I wish they'd put in some better methods there, but otherwise, I think this is what I'm going to go with. So I think that's where we're going to have to wrap this up. Overall, I think I found a reasonable option, and worst case, if you need something super specific, you do always have the capability to spin up a virtual machine, put Excel on a version of Windows inside that, and then you got the full thing. It's not perfect, but nothing is. Having used Calc for a few weeks now, I would say it's pretty serviceable. Now, it's probably going to take a while to get everything set up just the way I like it as far as the UI, but it is pretty customizable, and so I think it works good enough, right? So LibreOffice, that's where I'm going. Now, as for the others, again, there were some of them that I just didn't feel like were up to scratch, where I just don't see why anybody would use them. There just seem to be better options. You know, Calligra to me right off the bat was a dead end. ONLYOFFICE just didn't have much functionality to it. SoftMaker was okay, and it did have a very good UI, and I think for basic use that would maybe be a good option, but it does also cost money if you want the full feature set. WPS, again, it's kind of the same thing as SoftMaker, pretty good for basic use, pretty good UI, but again, it's proprietary, so that's kind of a downside. And that's the final conclusion. I really think LibreOffice is the only one that's really up to scratch. So if you disagree and you've got input, if there's something that I didn't look at that you think is really the holy grail, feel free to leave a comment down below and maybe I'll check it out. As always, I appreciate your time. Thanks.